The bolt cutters bit through the chain at 1:47 a.m. The warehouse stood in southern Tehran, surrounded by sleeping neighborhoods. Mossad agent David Barnea watched the lock fall to the concrete. He had 32 minutes before the next security patrol. The metal door groaned as his team pushed inside. Dust particles hung in the flashlight beams. The warehouse contained 183 filing cabinets. Each one held documents that could prove Iran's nuclear weapons program. Each one weighed approximately 110 pounds when full. Barnea's team had 6 agents on site. They'd spent 18 months planning this night. The Mossad had tracked this location since 2016 when a dissident Iranian nuclear scientist provided the address. The scientist disappeared 3 weeks after making contact. His body never surfaced. The filing cabinets lined 3 walls, gray metal, industrial grade. Israeli intelligence designated them as Soviet-era designs from the 1970s. Agent Yael Roth moved to the first cabinet. She pulled the drawer, locked. Every cabinet was locked. The team expected this. They'd brought a locksmith from Tel Aviv. He'd spent 6 months practicing on identical Soviet filing cabinets. His hands moved quickly now. The first lock clicked open in 40 seconds. Papers filled the drawer from front to back. Farsi text covered every page. Technical diagrams showed centrifuge configurations. Handwritten notes filled the margins. This was the Ahmad Program Archive, Iran's secret nuclear weapons development project from 1999 to 2003. Tehran claimed the Ahmad program never existed. These documents said otherwise. They detailed warhead designs, detonation systems, uranium enrichment cascades. The IAEA had suspected this archive existed for 12 years. Now Barnea was touching it. His radio crackled. Agent Roth whispered from outside. "Civilian car approaching from the north. Slowing down." Barnea moved to the doorway. A sedan rolled past on the adjacent street. The driver looked toward the warehouse. The car didn't stop. Barnea counted to 20. The sedan's taillights disappeared around the corner. The team had 30 trucks positioned throughout Tehran. They'd rotate vehicles every 6 minutes to avoid detection. The operation required removing half a ton of documents from this warehouse, doing it silently, doing it in one night. Agent Moshe Katz worked on cabinet number 7. He found CDs inside, 55,000 digital files according to later analysis, blueprints for nuclear cores, calculations for explosive lenses, test results from detonation trials. Iran had built a complete weapons program design library. Then, they'd locked it in a warehouse and pretended it didn't exist. The 2015 nuclear deal required Iran to declare all previous weapons research. Tehran submitted a report. The report mentioned none of this material. Every document Barnea's team touched represented a violation of that agreement. Agent Eli Cohen pulled papers from Cabinet 12. He recognized formulas for polonium triggers. Polonium has one use in nuclear physics. It initiates fission reactions in warheads. No civilian energy program needs polonium triggers. Cohen photographed 17 pages before moving to the next drawer. Time compressed as the team worked. Barnea checked his watch every 90 seconds. The security patrol would pass at 2:19 a.m. They had 27 minutes remaining. The team loaded documents into duffel bags. Each bag held 30 pounds. They carried the bags to a van parked 50 meters away. The van belonged to an import-export company that didn't exist. Its plates matched a vehicle registered to a Tehran businessman who was currently vacationing in Dubai. The businessman would never know his identity had been borrowed. Cabinet 23 contained photographs, black and white images of testing facilities. Engineers posed next to equipment. Barnea recognized one face, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, Iran's top nuclear scientist, the man who ran the Ahmad program. The man Tehran insisted was just a university professor. Fakhrizadeh appeared in 37 photographs from this archive. He stood beside centrifuges. He pointed at blueprints. He shook hands with military officials. These photos would later become evidence in Netanyahu's 2018 presentation. But that was 4 months away. Agent Roth's voice came through the radio again. "Patrol vehicle entering the district, 2 minutes out." The team accelerated. They couldn't leave the warehouse looking disturbed. They'd worked out a system. One agent removed documents, another replaced them with blank papers of identical weight. A third closed and relocked each cabinet. The warehouse needed to appear untouched until morning. The patrol car's engine rumbled in the distance. Barnea calculated angles. The patrol route passed within sight of the warehouse entrance. His team needed to be invisible in 90 seconds. 6 duffel bags sat by the door. The van couldn't approach now. Too risky with the patrol nearby. Barnea made a decision. They'd hide the bags inside the warehouse. Come back for them after the patrol passed. Agent Katz pushed the bags behind a stack of empty crates. The team killed their flashlights. Barnea pulled the metal door shut. The chain hung loose where they'd cut it, visible to anyone who looked closely. He grabbed the severed chain, wound it through the door handles. From 10 meters away, it looked intact. From 2 meters, the cut was obvious. Barnea hoped the patrol car wouldn't stop. The patrol car appeared at the end of the street. Its headlights swept across the warehouse wall. The team pressed against the building's shadow. Barnea controlled his breathing. The car rolled forward at 20 kilometers per hour. A second vehicle followed behind the patrol car. Barnea hadn't expected this. The second vehicle was civilian. A taxi. Its passenger would have a clear view of the warehouse entrance. The taxi slowed. Its brake lights flashed red. Someone was getting out. Barnea's hand moved to his weapon. A Jericho 941 pistol. 15 rounds. He'd never fired it on Iranian soil. He'd trained for 20 years, hoping he'd never need to. The taxi door opened and a woman stepped onto the street. She wore a black chador. She paid the driver and walked toward an apartment building, not toward the warehouse. Barnea's hand relaxed on the pistol grip. The patrol car continued past. Its occupants never looked at the warehouse. The taxi pulled away. The street fell silent again. Barnea waited 3 minutes. He signaled the team. They retrieved the duffel bags and loaded them into the van. The driver was Agent Sarah Levinson. She'd memorized 17 escape routes out of this district. She'd practiced each one during 4 reconnaissance trips to Tehran. The van departed at 2:24 a.m., 5 minutes behind schedule. The team re-entered the warehouse. 160 cabinets remained. Barnea revised his timeline. They needed 6 hours to empty this facility. They had 4 hours until sunrise. Agent Cohen found something in Cabinet 31, a leather-bound notebook, handwritten entries dated from 2001 to 2003. The writing was Fakhrizadeh's, his personal research journal. Calculations filled every page, weapon yield projections, delivery system specifications. One entry described a 5-kiloton warhead design that could fit inside a Shahab-3 missile nose cone. The Shahab-3 had a range of 2,000 kilometers. From Tehran, it could reach Tel Aviv. This wasn't theoretical research. These were operational weapons plans. Cohen radioed headquarters in Tel Aviv. Mossad Director Yossi Cohen answered immediately. Agent Cohen described the notebook. The director gave new orders. Photograph everything. Take the originals. Leave nothing behind that couldn't be replaced with convincing forgeries. The operation shifted. A second team arrived with a mobile scanning station, high-speed document scanners, professional lighting equipment. They converted a corner of the warehouse into a digital processing center. Every page would be photographed at 1200 DPI resolution. Agent Roth managed the scanning operation. She'd worked in Mossad's documentation unit for 8 years. She could process 40 pages per minute. At that rate, they needed 12 hours for the complete archive. They didn't have 12 hours. Barnea made another decision. They'd prioritize. Take the most valuable documents physically, scan everything else, leave the least important material behind. He designated 3 agents to sort documents by priority level. Cabinet 42 contained metallurgy reports, studies on uranium metal production, specific temperatures and pressure measurements. Iran claimed it never produced uranium metal. These reports documented 17 successful production runs between 2000 and 2002. Each run produced enough material for 1 weapons core. The scanning station hummed continuously. Agent Roth's hands moved in rhythm. Grab document, place on scanner, press button, remove document. Next. The pile of processed papers grew. A new problem emerged at 3:15 a.m. The warehouse had no climate control. Summer temperatures in Tehran reached 40 degrees Celsius during daytime. The documents had degraded. Some pages crumbled when touched. Others had ink that smeared at contact. Agent Katz adapted the technique. He used cotton gloves, handled fragile documents with 2 hands, placed degraded pages in protective sleeves before scanning. The process slowed to 20 pages per minute. Barnea calculated again. At current pace, they'd complete 60% of the archive before sunrise. Leaving 40% behind meant leaving evidence. Evidence that could reveal the theft. He called Tel Aviv again. Director Cohen authorized the contingency plan. They'd remove everything, transport it to a safe house in Tehran, continue processing there, extract the archive over several nights instead of one. The safe house was an apartment in northern Tehran. A Mossad asset owned it. She was an Iranian-born Israeli citizen who'd returned to Tehran in 2014. She ran a fabric import business. Her apartment had a basement that didn't appear on city planning documents. The team loaded 17 duffel bags into 3 vans. Each van took a different route to the safe house. They employed standard counter-surveillance protocols, random turns, speed variations, checking for vehicle follows. Agent Levinson drove van number 2. She spotted a motorcycle in her rearview mirror. It maintained distance behind her for 4 blocks. Consistent spacing meant professional surveillance. She executed a surveillance detection route. She turned right at the next intersection, then immediately left, then right again. The motorcycle disappeared. Either it wasn't following, or the operator was highly skilled and had broken off to avoid detection. Levinson reached the safe house at 4:02 a.m. The other vans arrived within 8 minutes. The basement absorbed all 17 bags. The asset owner never entered the basement. She didn't want to know what was there. Plausible deniability protected her if Iranian intelligence came asking questions. The team returned to the warehouse. 93 cabinets remained untouched. Dawn would break at 5:47 a.m. They had 1 hour, 45 minutes. Agent Cohen opened cabinet 58. He found engineering drawings, detailed schematics for a spherical implosion device. The drawing showed 32 explosive lenses arranged in a perfect sphere. Wires connected each lens to a central detonator. This was a nuclear weapon blueprint. Unambiguous. Complete. The drawing included measurements in centimeters, weight calculations in kilograms, material specifications for each component. An engineer could build a working weapon from this blueprint. That made it the most dangerous document in the archive. Cohen photographed the blueprint from 6 angles. He removed it from the cabinet, rolled it carefully, placed it in a waterproof tube. This document would travel separately from the rest, maximum security protocols. The sky began lightening at 5:30 a.m. Barnea called the extraction. The team grabbed priority documents from 20 more cabinets, left the rest, replaced removed documents with blank papers, relocked every cabinet they'd touched. Agent Roth performed the final security sweep. She checked for fingerprints on metal surfaces, wiped down door handles, collected a dropped pen that belonged to Agent Katz. She found a small blood smear on cabinet 71. Agent Cohen had cut his thumb on a metal edge. She cleaned it with alcohol solution. The team exited the warehouse at 5:52 a.m., 5 minutes after sunrise. Early morning traffic was building. They blended into the flow, 6 agents in 3 vehicles spreading across Tehran. Barnea rode in the 3rd vehicle. He carried the waterproof tube with the implosion device blueprint. His driver was Agent Yael Roth. She navigated toward the embassy district, where diplomatic cover could provide protection if they were stopped. A police checkpoint appeared ahead, not part of the normal city infrastructure. Temporary barricades. 4 officers checking vehicles. Barnea's stomach tightened. Random checkpoints were rare in this district. The timing suggested someone had reported suspicious activity. Roth slowed the vehicle. 2 cars separated them from the checkpoint. Barnea evaluated options. They carried false Iranian documents. Their cover story involved early morning deliveries to a restaurant supplier. The story was thin. It wouldn't survive aggressive questioning. The officer at the checkpoint waved the first car through, examined the second car more carefully, checked the driver's papers, looked in the trunk, released the vehicle after 90 seconds. Barnea and Roth pulled forward. The officer approached the driver's window. He was young, maybe 25. He wore the uniform of Tehran's municipal police, not intelligence service. That was favorable. The officer requested identification. Roth handed him her forged Iranian driver's license. The license identified her as Nasreen Abbasi, a Tehran resident, born 1985, no criminal record in the Iranian database because Mossad had inserted her identity into that database 6 months earlier. The officer examined the license. He looked at Roth's face. Back to the license. He asked where they were going this early. Roth explained the restaurant supplier story. Early deliveries before morning rush. The officer nodded. He walked to the passenger side. He looked at Barnea, requested his identification. Barnea provided a matching forged document. The officer studied it longer than necessary. Something had triggered suspicion. Barnea's hand rested near his weapon. He couldn't draw it, not with 3 other officers at the checkpoint, not in morning traffic with witnesses. If this went wrong, the entire operation collapsed. The officer asked Barnea to step out of the vehicle, standard procedure or targeted suspicion. Barnea couldn't determine which. He opened the door slowly. His mind ran through combat scenarios. 4 officers, 70 meters to the nearest corner, the waterproof tube in the back seat containing evidence that would trigger an international incident. He stood on the pavement. The officer walked around him, examining, evaluating. The officer asked about the tube in the back seat. Barnea felt his pulse accelerate. He needed an answer that satisfied curiosity without inviting closer inspection. He said the tube contained architectural drawings. He was a building contractor, morning site inspection. The officer asked which building. Barnea provided an address 3 kilometers away, a construction site that actually existed. Mossad had verified it 2 weeks ago during mission planning. The officer returned to his checkpoint station. He picked up a radio. Barnea watched him key the microphone, speaking to someone, requesting something. The conversation lasted 40 seconds. Roth's eyes met Barnea's in the side mirror. Her expression asked the question, abort and run, or wait and hope. Barnea made the decision. They'd wait. Running would confirm guilt. Waiting meant trusting the forged documents and cover story. Either choice could end the mission. The officer returned. He handed back both identification documents and waved them through. No explanation, no further questions. Barnea returned to the vehicle. Roth accelerated smoothly. Not too fast, not too slow. They merged into traffic 2 blocks later. Barnea's radio vibrated. Agent Cohen reported from his vehicle. He'd passed a different checkpoint in eastern Tehran. Same configuration, 4 officers. Temporary barricades. Tehran police had established a citywide inspection pattern. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Someone had discovered something, either the warehouse breach or suspicious activity near the safe house. Iranian intelligence was casting a wide net. All 3 Mossad vehicles needed to reach secure locations before the net closed. Barnea radioed new instructions: abandon the planned routes, execute emergency dispersion protocol. Each team would navigate independently to separate safe houses across Tehran. Agent Levinson drove Van 1 toward the western suburbs. She carried 8 duffel bags containing priority documents. Her safe house was a mechanic's garage owned by a Kurdish Iranian who owed Mossad a decade-old favor. The favor involved extracting his brother from Evin prison in 2008. Van 2 headed south. Agent Katz drove with 3 other team members. They carried the scanning equipment and 11 duffel bags. Their destination was an empty office building scheduled for demolition. Mossad had purchased it through a shell company. The demolition permit gave them 3 weeks before the building came down. Barnea and Roth continued toward the original safe house in northern Tehran. They needed to warn the asset owner. If Iranian intelligence traced any team member to that location, she'd be compromised. Compromised assets in Tehran faced interrogation at best, execution at worst. They reached the safe house at 6:34 a.m. The asset owner was making breakfast. Her name was Tamar Rabinowitz, born in Tehran 1971, emigrated to Israel 1989, returned to Iran 2014 under deep cover. She'd spent 4 years building her fabric business into a legitimate enterprise. Her customer list included 3 government ministries. Barnea told her about the checkpoints. Tamar absorbed the information without visible reaction. She'd been trained for this scenario. She asked if the documents in her basement needed immediate removal. Barnea said yes. The problem was daylight. Moving large bags through Tehran in daylight increased exposure, but leaving the documents in Tamar's basement increased her risk. Barnea chose her safety over operational security. They moved the 17 duffel bags from basement to vehicle in 6 trips. Tamar's neighbors were awake now. Morning routines, people leaving for work. Each trip carrying a heavy bag risked observation. Agent Roth developed a cover story in real time. She told Tamar's neighbor they were moving fabric samples. Tamar's business imported textiles. The story matched observable reality. The neighbor lost interest. The last bag left the basement at 7:12 a.m. Barney thanked Tamar. She asked no questions about what she'd stored. She simply returned to her breakfast. Her hand trembled slightly, holding the tea glass. The only sign of stress she displayed. Barnea and Roth drove toward the demolition building in South Tehran. Traffic thickened, morning rush hour peak. The vehicle crawled through intersections. Barnea calculated exposure time. Every minute on Tehran streets with stolen nuclear documents increased the probability of interception. A motorcycle appeared behind them, same type as the one Agent Levinson had spotted earlier. Black Honda, 2 riders. The passenger carried a bag across his chest, courier bag or surveillance equipment bag. Barnea couldn't determine which. The motorcycle maintained consistent distance, 3 car lengths back. When Roth changed lanes, the motorcycle changed lanes. When she slowed, the motorcycle slowed. Professional follow technique. Roth executed a box pattern, 4 right turns forming a square. The motorcycle stayed with them through 3 turns. On the 4th turn, it peeled off. Replaced immediately by a gray sedan. 2 occupants, driver and passenger. The passenger held something to his face. Binoculars or a camera. Barnea confirmed active surveillance, multiple vehicles in coordinated rotation. Iranian intelligence had identified them. The question was how much they knew. Simple traffic violation interest or nuclear archive theft awareness. He made another decision. They couldn't lead surveillance to the demolition building. That would compromise Agent Katz's team and the bulk of the archive. They needed to break the follow or create a diversion. Roth knew Tehran's street network from 6 months of preparation. She accelerated into the center lane, cut across 2 lanes of traffic, turned into a narrow alley between apartment buildings. The gray sedan couldn't follow without revealing obvious pursuit intent. The alley opened onto a market street, vendors setting up morning stalls, crowds forming. Roth drove slowly through the pedestrian flow. People parted reluctantly. Some shouted at the vehicle. The chaos provided cover. They emerged on a wide boulevard. No gray sedan visible, no motorcycle. Barnea scanned rooftops and elevated positions. Surveillance teams sometimes positioned spotters at high points. He saw nothing suspicious. Roth drove randomly for 18 minutes, checking mirrors constantly, looking for repeat vehicles. The surveillance appeared broken. They headed toward the demolition building using an indirect route. Agent Katz radioed at 8:03 a.m. He'd encountered a problem at the demolition building. The demolition permit had been revoked. A city inspector waited at the entrance. The inspector claimed structural instability required immediate evacuation of the area. Barnea suspected coordination. Checkpoints across the city. Surveillance on his vehicle. Now, an unexpected inspector at their safe house. Iranian intelligence was moving systematically. Katz asked for instructions. He had 11 bags of documents and 4 exposed agents in a van. Nowhere to unload, nowhere to hide. Tehran was closing around them. Barnea considered options. They could approach the Israeli Interests section at the Turkish embassy, request emergency diplomatic extraction. That meant abandoning the archive, years of planning wasted, or they could find another location, take more risks, complete the mission despite the pressure. Barnea had built his career on calculated risks. This one seemed calculable. He radioed Agent Levinson, asked for her status. She reported safe arrival at the mechanic's garage in western Tehran. No surveillance detected. Her 8 bags were secure. The garage owner was cooperative. Barnea redirected Katz to the garage. It would hold 19 bags total, crowded but possible. The garage owner wouldn't appreciate the additional exposure, but he'd committed to helping Mossad. Committed people rarely backed out mid-operation. Katz acknowledged and changed course. His van crossed Tehran from south to west. 40-minute drive in current traffic. 40 minutes of exposure with priority intelligence material. Barnea and Roth reached an industrial district near Mehrabad Airport. They needed to disappear for several hours, let surveillance resources disperse. Iranian intelligence couldn't maintain citywide lockdown indefinitely. Resources were finite. Pressure eventually decreased. They found a parking structure serving airport cargo facilities. 3rd level, corner space with sightlines to the entrance ramp. Roth backed the vehicle into the space. They waited. Barnea opened the waterproof tube, removed the implosion device blueprint, studied it in morning light. The drawing showed precision engineering, tolerances measured in micrometers. Timing mechanisms synchronized to nanoseconds. Someone with advanced weapons physics knowledge had created this design. The blueprint included a signature block, Fakhrizade's signature, dated April 2002. Also signed by 3 other engineers. Their names would later appear on Mossad's target list, but in August 2018 they were still alive, still working in Iran's nuclear program. Agent Roth photographed the blueprint with a secure camera, encrypted memory card. The photos would transmit to Tel Aviv via satellite link once they established secure communication. For now, they maintained radio silence. Radio transmissions could be triangulated. 3 hours passed in the parking structure. Barnea monitored local news on a smartphone. Nothing about a warehouse breach. Nothing about checkpoint operations. Iranian intelligence was operating quietly. Public announcements would come later if they decided to acknowledge the theft. At 11:47 a.m., Katz radioed arrival at the garage. All bags transferred safely. The garage owner was unhappy, but stable. He demanded additional payment. Mossad would provide it. Barnea had 3 teams now consolidated into 2 locations. The garage in West Tehran held 19 bags. His vehicle held the implosion blueprint, and 17 more bags still in Tamar's basement. No, he'd already moved those. His vehicle held only the blueprint tube. The 17 bags were already moved to this vehicle earlier. His tired mind was making errors. Operational fatigue affected decision-making. He needed to remain sharp. He reviewed the tactical situation clearly. Garage location held 19 bags with Levinson and Katz's teams. Demolition building was compromised. Tamar's safe house was clean, but couldn't be reused. His vehicle held the blueprint plus 17 bags. Total, 36 bags of Iranian nuclear archive documents. The original plan called for diplomatic pouch extraction. Israeli embassy in Ankara would receive the documents via special courier. But moving 36 bags across the Iran-Turkey border required significant logistics and time. And current surveillance pressure made border crossing extremely dangerous. Barnea needed a new extraction plan. He contacted Tel Aviv on encrypted satellite phone. Director Cohen answered. Barnea explained the situation. The surveillance, the checkpoints, the compromised safe house. Director Cohen authorized an air extraction, a civilian cargo flight from Tehran to Baku, Azerbaijan. Israeli intelligence had an asset working as cargo supervisor at Mehrabad Airport. The asset could bypass security screening for specific cargo containers. The flight departed at 6:30 p.m., 8 hours away. Barnea needed to move 36 bags to the airport, stage them in the cargo facility, transfer them to the asset, complete the handoff without Iranian customs inspection, all while under potential surveillance. The asset's name was Reza Mousavi, Iranian national, airport employee for 12 years. Mossad recruited him in 2015 after his daughter was denied medical treatment in Tehran. Mossad arranged her treatment in Tel Aviv. Mousavi had been providing intelligence ever since. Barnea coordinated with Mousavi via encrypted messaging. Mousavi confirmed he could accept 36 bags as textile shipments. The cover story matched Tamar's business, plausible and documented. He needed the bags delivered to Cargo Warehouse C before 4 p.m. 4 hours to consolidate and transport 36 bags across Tehran to the airport, with unknown surveillance status and heightened security. The mission parameters had degraded significantly. Success probability was dropping with each complication. Agent Levinson volunteered her van for the airport run. She'd completed 2 successful transports already. She knew the routes. She could execute the delivery. Barnea agreed Katz would accompany her. 2 agents, 1 van, 36 bags, 1 chance. They loaded the van at the garage starting at 1:15 p.m. The garage owner helped silently. His cooperation was purchased but genuine. Some assets worked from ideology, others from gratitude, a few from fear. Motivation mattered less than reliability. The van departed at 1:52 p.m. Levinson drove. Katz rode passenger seat with a Glock 19 under his jacket. They took the most direct route. Time pressure overrode security concerns. Sometimes the fastest approach was the safest because it minimized exposure duration. Barnea and Roth followed in a separate vehicle, overwatch position. If surveillance picked up the van, they'd intervene, create a distraction, draw attention away, standard protective detail procedure. The airport approach road had 3 checkpoints, permanent installations checking commercial vehicles. Levinson's van would pass through all 3. Her documents identified the cargo as textile samples. Weight matched the declaration. Origin matched Tamar's business registration. First checkpoint at 2:34 p.m. The inspector barely looked, waved them through. Second checkpoint 3 minutes later, more thorough. The inspector opened the rear doors, looked at the bags, asked about contents. Levinson repeated the textile story. The inspector selected 1 bag randomly, unzipped it. Papers spilled out, Farsi text visible, technical diagrams on top. The inspector's expression changed and he reached for his radio. Katz's hand moved toward his weapon. Levinson kept her face neutral. The inspector lifted a document, examined it. The text was technical Farsi, metallurgy terminology, centrifuge specifications. Any trained eye would recognize nuclear program material. The inspector wasn't trained. He was airport security, low level, checking for contraband and smuggled goods. Technical documents meant nothing to him. He dropped the paper back in the bag, zipped it closed, waved them through. Katz's hand relaxed. Levinson accelerated smoothly. They'd survived on luck, pure luck. The mission was held together by decreasing margins. Third checkpoint was unmanned. Budget cuts had reduced staffing. The barrier stayed raised. They drove directly to Cargo Warehouse C. Mousavi waited at the loading dock. He wore airport supervisor uniform. He looked nervous. First major operation for him. Theoretical support was different from active participation. Levinson backed the van to the dock. Mousavi opened the rear doors. He saw 36 bags. His face showed concern. He'd expected smaller volume. This much cargo would attract attention from other workers. Barnea arrived 30 seconds later. He joined Mousavi at the dock, explained the situation required improvisation. Mousavi nodded. He radioed his loading crew, told them to take break. 15 minutes. The crew departed. 4 people moved 36 bags in 12 minutes. Barnea, Katz, Levinson, and Mousavi. The bags went into a shipping container marked for textile export to Baku. Standard 20-foot container, the bags filled 1/3 of the space. Mousavi added legitimate textile bales around the bags, camouflage and weight distribution. He sealed the container at 3:08 p.m. Applied security tape and customs stamps. The stamps were authentic. Musavi had access to official materials. The container now appeared properly inspected and approved. It would bypass secondary screening. The cargo flight was Azerbaijan Airlines, Flight 271, scheduled departure 6:30 p.m. The aircraft was an Ilyushin Il-76, Soviet-era cargo plane, capacity 40 tons. The container weighed approximately 800 kilograms, well within limits. Musavi logged the container into the flight manifest. Destination: Haydar Aliyev International Airport, Baku. Recipient: Silk Road Trading Company. The company existed. Israeli Front Organization established in 2012. It had processed 17 legitimate shipments through Baku in the past year. This would be number 18. Barnea thanked Musavi, asked if he felt secure. Musavi said he'd followed procedure exactly, no deviations that would trigger investigation. Unless someone specifically looked for nuclear archive documents, they'd find textile samples and proper paperwork. The team departed the airport at 3:31 p.m. They split into 3 vehicles, heading different directions. Standard dispersal protocol after major handoff. Levinson drove towards the Turkish border. 8-hour drive. She'd cross at the Bazargan checkpoint using her cover identity. Agent Katz went with her. Barnea and Roth headed toward the Caspian coast. They'd take a fishing boat to Azerbaijan from Bandar-e-Anzali. Mossad maintained 3 boat assets along the Iranian coast. Small vessels, fishing trawlers. They moved people and materials across the Caspian regularly. The boat captain was waiting at Pier 7. His name was Jamshid. No last name. He'd worked for Mossad since 2009. He asked no questions, charged no fees. His brother had been executed by the Revolutionary Guard in 2008. Jamshid helped Israel because Israel opposed Iran's government. Simple motivation. Reliable motivation. The boat departed at 7:15 p.m., 45 minutes after Flight 271 left Tehran. Barnea watched the Iranian coastline recede. He'd spent 72 hours in Tehran during this operation. 18 months of planning had compressed into 3 days of execution. They'd stolen half a ton of nuclear weapons documentation. They'd exposed a decade of Iranian lies about the Ahmad program. The Caspian Sea was calm. The boat made 12 knots, 5 hours to Azerbaijani territorial waters. Jamshid navigated without running lights. Iranian Coast Guard patrolled these waters. Getting stopped now would end everything. Roth sat in the cabin, reviewing mission notes. She needed to prepare the operational debrief. Every action, every decision, every close call. Mossad would analyze the operation for months, extract lessons, improve protocols. She documented the checkpoint encounter. The inspector who opened the bag but didn't recognize nuclear documents, that was a critical vulnerability. Future operations couldn't rely on inspector ignorance. They needed better concealment methods. She documented the surveillance on Tehran streets, the coordinated vehicle rotation, the elevated observation posts. Iranian intelligence had demonstrated sophisticated capabilities, more sophisticated than previous assessments indicated. That intelligence would inform future planning. Barnea's satellite phone vibrated at 9:47 p.m. Director Cohen calling from Tel Aviv. Flight 271 had landed in Baku. The container was in Azerbaijani customs. The Silk Road Trading Company representative was processing paperwork. Standard procedure, no complications indicated. 30 minutes later, the phone vibrated again. Container cleared customs. Now in Israeli diplomatic custody at the Baku embassy, the documents were secure. Mission success confirmed. Barnea felt the tension release from his shoulders. 72 hours of sustained operational stress. Every decision carrying mission-ending consequences. They'd succeeded despite multiple compromises, despite surveillance, despite checkpoint encounters, despite inspector inspections. The boat crossed into Azerbaijani waters at 12:23 a.m. Jamshid adjusted course towards Baku. Another 3 hours. Dawn would break as they reached the harbor. Barnea would enter Azerbaijan as a Turkish businessman. His passport was flawless. His cover story was rehearsed. His appearance matched the passport photo. Roth would enter separately through the airport the next day. Different identity, different routing, standard separation protocol after joint operations. Agents dispersed to multiple countries before returning to Israel. This prevented pattern recognition by hostile intelligence services. The Baku harbor appeared at 3:34 a.m. Jamshid docked at a commercial pier. He tied off the boat and returned to his cabin. No goodbyes, no acknowledgments. He'd return to Iranian waters the same day, resume his fishing activities, maintain his cover. Barnea walked off the pier at 3:52 a.m. A taxi waited. The driver was Mossad Logistics. He drove Barnea to a hotel in central Baku. The hotel room was registered to a Turkish construction company. Barnea showered, changed clothes, slept for 4 hours. He woke at 8:15 a.m., turned on the television. CNN International was broadcasting breaking news. Benjamin Netanyahu scheduled a major announcement for Monday evening. Subject classified. High security at the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem. Speculation about Iranian nuclear program. Barnea understood immediately. Netanyahu would reveal the archive theft, use the documents as evidence against Iran, prove Tehran had violated the nuclear agreement. The timing was calculated. Maximum political impact, maximum international pressure. The operation had a second phase, political warfare. The documents weren't just intelligence, they were ammunition. Netanyahu would use them to argue for tougher sanctions, for military options, for canceling the 2015 nuclear deal. Barnea flew to Tel Aviv on Sunday afternoon, El Al, flight 562. He traveled as David Barnea, his real name, his real passport. The operation was over, cover identities were retired. He could return to official status. The plane landed at Ben Gurion Airport at 4:17 p.m. Barnea went directly to Mossad headquarters in Herzliya. Director Cohen was waiting. The archived documents filled 3 rooms, analysts working around the clock, translating, cataloging, cross-referencing. Cohen walked Barnea through the preliminary findings, 55,000 digital files, 100,000 paper documents, evidence of weapons research spanning 15 years, warhead designs, delivery systems, testing protocols. Everything needed to build a nuclear arsenal. One document caught Barnea's attention, a memo dated July 2003, written by Fakhrizadeh. It outlined plans to preserve the Ahmad program research. Tehran had agreed to suspend weapons development under international pressure, but Fakhrizadeh recommended archiving all materials for future use, store them safely. Wait for better political conditions. Resume the program when possible. The memo explained the warehouse in southern Tehran. Iran hadn't abandoned nuclear weapons ambitions. They'd paused them, put them in storage. The 2015 nuclear deal required declaration of past weapons work. Iran declared nothing, because admitting the archive existed meant admitting intent to preserve weapons capability. Barnea realized the full impact. These documents proved Iran negotiated the 2015 deal in bad faith, hid critical information, maintained the infrastructure and knowledge to restart weapons development. The archive wasn't historical curiosity. It was active threat. Monday evening arrived. Netanyahu's announcement was scheduled for 8 p.m. International media gathered at the Prime Minister's office. Cameras from 60 countries. Speculation was intense. Barnea watched from Mossad headquarters. Netanyahu appeared on screen at 8:03 p.m. He stood beside a wall of filing cabinets, gray metal, Soviet-era design, the same cabinets from the Tehran warehouse. Mossad had transported them to Jerusalem for the presentation. Netanyahu spoke in English, addressed the international audience directly. He explained the operation in general terms, didn't name agents, didn't specify exact dates, but he showed the documents, blueprint after blueprint, report after report, Fakhrizadeh's signature on multiple pages. He displayed the spherical implosion device drawing, explained its purpose, showed uranium metal production reports, explained their significance, showed polonium trigger research, explained the connection to weapons development. The presentation lasted 21 minutes. Netanyahu concluded with a direct statement. Iran had lied about its nuclear program. The archive proved it. The 2015 deal was built on deception. The international community needed to respond. Global reaction was immediate. The IAEA requested access to the documents. The United States praised the intelligence operation. European nations called for investigation. Russia and China questioned document authenticity. Iran denied everything. Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif appeared on television Tuesday morning, called the documents fabricated, claimed Israeli intelligence had forged evidence, said the warehouse never existed. The Ahmad program was fictional. Everything was lies. But Zarif's denial created a problem. Iranian security services knew the warehouse had been breached. They'd established checkpoints that morning. They'd conducted surveillance operations. Internal reports documented the theft. Zarif was denying something his own intelligence services confirmed. The contradiction exposed internal conflicts. Iranian leadership couldn't publicly admit the archive existed without confirming weapons program violations. But they couldn't explain the warehouse breach without acknowledging the archive. They were trapped by their own deception. Barnea watched the international pressure build. The archive theft had achieved its strategic objective, not just gathering intelligence, changing the political landscape, making it impossible for Iran to maintain the fiction of pure civilian nuclear activities. 3 weeks after Netanyahu's announcement the United States withdrew from the 2015 nuclear deal, President Trump cited Iranian deception as the reason, referenced the archive documents as proof, reimposed sanctions. The deal collapsed. European nations tried to preserve the agreement, but without American participation it was hollow. Iran began exceeding uranium enrichment limits within months. The archive documents had predicted this. Fakhrizadeh's 2003 memo about preserving capability for future restart. Still, it was happening exactly as planned. Barnea received a commendation from the Prime Minister. Classified ceremony, no media coverage. The agents who executed the Tehran operation attended. Levinson, Katz, Cohen, Roth, the team that had pulled off the most significant intelligence operation since capturing Adolf Eichmann in 1960. Director Cohen spoke at the ceremony, explained the historical significance. Previous intelligence operations had gathered information. This operation had changed history, altered the strategic balance, exposed truth that shifted international policy. But the operation had a cost. Tamar Rabinowitz was arrested in Tehran in October 2018. Iranian intelligence traced the warehouse theft to her fabric business. She was interrogated for 6 months. Iran executed her in March 2019, charged with espionage. The execution was public, meant to deter other Israeli assets. Mousavi, the airport supervisor, disappeared in November 2018. His body was found in January 2019, dumped on a Tehran street. Revolutionary Guard signature killing. Iranian intelligence had reviewed airport cargo records, found the Baku shipment, traced it to Mousavi. Jamshid, the boat captain, survived. He stopped working for Mossad after the operation, returned to simple fishing. Iranian authorities never connected him to the archive theft. Luck saved him. Luck and careful operational security. The human cost weighed on Barnea. Tamar and Mousavi had risked everything. They'd known the dangers, but knowing risks intellectually was different from facing execution. Barnea attended their memorial service at Mossad headquarters, names added to the wall of fallen agents, sacrifice recognized, never forgotten. Fakhrizadeh continued his work until November 2020. He was killed in an ambush outside Tehran, remotely operated machine gun, precision operation. Iran blamed Israel. Israel neither confirmed nor denied. Fakhrizadeh's death closed the circle. The man who created the Ahmad program, who wrote the archive documents, who signed the implosion device blueprint. He was gone. The archive documents remained in Israeli custody, analyzed continuously. New discoveries emerged regularly, hidden connections, unnamed scientists, foreign assistance networks. The information enabled dozens of follow-up operations, disrupted Iranian weapons development, set the program back years. Barnea was promoted to Mossad director in June 2021. He inherited responsibility for Iran operations. The archive theft was his legacy, but also his burden. The agents lost, the assets executed. Success always carried costs. Intelligence work demanded payment in blood and sacrifice. He kept one document from the archive on his office desk, the spherical implosion device blueprint, Fakhrizade's signature visible at the bottom, reminder of why the operation mattered, reminder of what they'd prevented. Iran with nuclear weapons would destabilize the entire Middle East. The archived documents proved Iran intended exactly that. The warehouse in southern Tehran stood empty now. Iranian authorities had removed everything, destroyed the building eventually, erased evidence of its purpose. But the documents survived. 55,000 files, 100,000 pages. Truth preserved despite efforts to hide it. Intelligence services worldwide studied the operation, the planning, the execution, the extraction under pressure. It became a case study, taught at training facilities, analyzed in strategic planning sessions. The Tehran warehouse heist set new standards for operational audacity. Barnea reflected on the mission years later, the decisions made under pressure, the agents who performed flawlessly, the assets who paid ultimate prices. Intelligence work demanded these calculations, risk versus reward, individual lives versus strategic outcomes. The math was brutal, but necessary. The archive theft accomplished something unprecedented. It took evidence Iran wanted hidden and made it impossible to ignore. Truth became unavoidable. Deception became exposed. The 2015 nuclear deal's foundation cracked because the documents proved it was built on lies. Iran's nuclear program continued evolving. New facilities, new centrifuges, new enrichment levels. But international pressure remained intense. Sanctions stayed in place. Military options remained available. The archive documents had shifted the equation permanently. The world knew Iran's true intentions. Denial was no longer credible. Barnea visited the memorial wall regularly, stood before Tamar's name, before Mousavi's name, remembered their courage. Their sacrifice enabled Israel's security. Their deaths purchased strategic advantage. Cold calculation, necessary calculation, the math of intelligence work. The spherical implosion device blueprint remained on his desk. Physical reminder of physical threat. Iran's nuclear ambitions weren't theoretical. The blueprint proved engineering readiness, operational capability. Only political will and resource constraints prevented implementation. The archive showed Iran was waiting, planning, preparing for the moment conditions aligned. That moment never came. The theft ensured it. Netanyahu's announcement created irreversible pressure. International consensus shifted. Even Iran's allies questioned their denials. The documents were too detailed, too specific, too authentic. Forgery at that scale was impossible. The operation's true success wasn't stealing documents. It was changing reality, making it impossible for Iran to claim innocence, forcing international community to acknowledge the threat, creating political conditions that constrained Iranian actions. Intelligence work at the highest level. Strategic impact beyond the tactical mission. Barnea understood this. The warehouse heist was never just about gathering information. It was about shaping the future, preventing outcomes, altering trajectories. 55,000 files that changed the calculus of Middle East security. 100,000 pages that exposed a decade of systematic deception. The documents lived on, analyzed daily, referenced in policy papers, cited in diplomatic negotiations, used to justify sanctions, used to explain military preparations. The archive had become permanent evidence, unchangeable proof. Iran's nuclear weapons program was real, had been real, would be real again if international pressure ever relaxed. The truth was out. The mission had ensured it, and the mission had ensured it would remain out forever. But one document stayed classified until 2023. A memo discovered deep in the archive's digital files. Agent Roth found it during a routine review. The file was encrypted, triple-layer protection. Mossad's cryptography team needed 6 weeks to break it. The memo was dated August 2015, 1 month before the nuclear deal was signed, written by Fakhrizadeh to Iran's Supreme National Security Council. It outlined a contingency plan. If international inspectors ever discovered the archive's existence, Iran would claim the documents were old research, discontinued work, historical artifacts with no current relevance. The memo's existence proved premeditation. Iran knew the archive violated the pending nuclear agreement. They created a cover story before signing the deal. The deception was calculated, institutional, approved at the highest levels. Barnea read the memo in December 2023, 5 years after the warehouse theft. The document added another layer to the story. Iran hadn't simply hidden evidence. They'd prepared explanations for if the evidence was found. Multi-level deception, backup, lies supporting primary lies. He authorized the memo's release to the IAEA. The timing was deliberate. Negotiations for a revised nuclear deal were underway. Iran was demanding sanction relief, claiming cooperation. The memo showed their cooperation was tactical, temporary, designed to achieve specific goals while preserving weapons capability. The IAEA received the document in January 2024. Director General Rafael Grossi reviewed it personally. He called it the most damning evidence yet of systematic Iranian deception. The memo proved Iran had entered the 2015 agreement with intent to violate its terms. That changed everything. Negotiations collapsed within weeks. European nations withdrew support. Even China expressed concerns about Iranian credibility. The memo had poisoned the diplomatic atmosphere. Trust couldn't survive documented proof of planned deception. Iranian officials claimed the memo was fabricated, but the encryption method matched Iran's classified communication protocols. The digital signature was authentic. Iranian government systems had generated the file. Forensic analysis confirmed it. The memo was real. Fakhrizadeh's name appeared on this document too. His fingerprints covered the entire archive, every major weapons research initiative, every deception plan, every contingency protocol. He'd been the architect, the builder, the protector of Iran's nuclear weapons program. His assassination in November 2020 had eliminated that architecture's chief designer, but the plans remained. Other scientists studied his work, continued his research. The program survived its creator. That was intentional design, institutional knowledge distributed across multiple scientists. No single point of failure. The archive documents enabled targeted operations against those scientists. Barnea authorized 17 missions between 2019 and 2024. Eliminations, defections, disruptions. Each operation based on intelligence from the warehouse theft. Names in the documents became names on target lists. Some scientists died in accidents, car crashes, poisonings, lab explosions. Iranian officials blamed Israel. Israel maintained silence. The accidents continued. The nuclear program lost expertise steadily. Brain drain through calculated attrition. Other scientists defected. Mossad approached them with evidence from the archive, showed them documents bearing their signatures, explained the choice, cooperate or face consequences. Many chose cooperation, provided current intelligence, updated the archive with recent developments. One defector was particularly valuable, Dr. Hassan Tehrani, senior metallurgist, specialist in uranium metal production. His signature appeared on 47 archive documents. He defected in March 2022, crossed into Turkey at the Bazargan checkpoint. Same crossing Agent Levinson had used. Tehrani brought a laptop containing 2 years of recent research. Designs for advanced centrifuges, specifications for underground facilities, personnel rosters showing 300 scientists currently working on weapons research. His information confirmed the archive wasn't historical. The program was active, ongoing, advancing. Israeli intelligence shared Tehrani's information with the United States. The CIA verified it independently. Satellite imagery confirmed the underground facilities. Signal intelligence confirmed the personnel rosters. Iran was operating a shadow weapons program alongside its declared civilian activities. The revelation triggered another sanctions wave. The United States designated 15 Iranian nuclear facilities, froze assets of 30 scientists, imposed technology export controls. The pressure increased systematically, each revelation from the archive enabling new restrictions. Iran's economy suffered. Currency collapsed. Inflation exceeded 40%. Unemployment rose. Civil unrest followed. Protests in Tehran and other major cities. The government blamed external enemies, but the archive documents had created the external pressure. Intelligence warfare, producing economic consequences, producing political instability. Barnea watched the cascade effects. One warehouse theft generating years of strategic advantage. The operation kept producing value, new discoveries in old documents, new applications of archived intelligence, the gift that continued giving. But he never forgot the costs. Tamar Rabinowitz, Reza Mousavi, executed for helping Israel. Their families suffered too. Tamar's sister lost her government job. Mousavi's children were denied university admission. Iranian authorities punished collaboration through multiple generations. Mossad provided support where possible. Money transferred through covert channels, educational opportunities arranged abroad, protection for family members who escaped Iran. The agency took care of its assets' families. Moral obligation, operational necessity. Agent Levinson retired in 2022. She'd run 43 missions after Tehran. None matched the warehouse operation's significance. She settled in northern Israel, taught at Mossad's training academy. Her lectures on the Tehran Heist were classified. Only active field agents attended. Agent Katz was killed in Beirut in 2021. Hezbollah ambush. Different operation. Different mission. But the risk was always present. Intelligence work demanded everything eventually. Katz had survived Tehran's checkpoints, hadn't survived Beirut streets. The luck ran out. It always did. Agent Roth became Deputy Director of Operations in 2023. She managed Iran missions from Tel Aviv. Approved operations based on archive intelligence. The documents she'd helped steal in 2018 guided her decisions 5 years later. The operation's legacy lived through her work. Yael Roth never discussed the Tehran mission publicly. Operational security remained absolute. But she kept a photograph in her office, the warehouse exterior, taken during reconnaissance months before the theft. Reminder of where it started. That ordinary building in southern Tehran containing extraordinary secrets. Director Barnea visited the photo memory wall again in 2024, 6 years after the operation. Tamar's name, Mousavi's name, Katz's name now added, 3 people connected to the warehouse theft, 3 people who paid the ultimate price. The math of intelligence work continued calculating. He placed his hand on the wall, felt the engraved letters. Each name represented a story, a life, a sacrifice. The wall held hundreds of names, decades of operations, generations of agents, the cost of Israel's survival measured in lives given. The spherical implosion device blueprint remained on his desk. Constant reminder, constant warning, Iran's nuclear ambitions hadn't disappeared. The archive showed historical capability. Current intelligence showed continuing development. The threat evolved, but never vanished. New facilities were under construction, deep underground, harder to strike, better protected. Iran learned from past vulnerabilities, adapted, improved security. The archive theft had made them more careful, more sophisticated. The cat-and-mouse game continued at higher levels. Barnea authorized a new surveillance operation in 2024. Target: suspected new archive location. Intelligence suggested Iran had created backup documentation storage, learning from the 2018 theft, distributing materials across multiple sites, making another warehouse raid impossible. The new operation would be different, more complex, higher risk, but necessary. Iran's nuclear program remained Israel's existential threat. The archived documents proved the program's scope. New intelligence needed to track its evolution. The mission never ended, only adapted. Agent Roth planned the new operation. She applied lessons from the Tehran warehouse, better surveillance detection, stronger cover identities, multiple extraction routes. The 2018 mission's successes and failures informed every decision. Experience was the best teacher. Survival required learning. The planning took 18 months, recruitment of new assets inside Iran, technical preparation, route reconnaissance. The operation was scheduled for late 2025, 7 years after the original warehouse theft, the cycle continuing. Intelligence work was infinite iteration. Barnea wondered about the long-term impact. The archived documents had changed Middle East dynamics, exposed Iranian deception, justified international pressure, enabled targeted operations. But had they prevented nuclear weapons development, or merely delayed it? The answer was unclear. Iran's program continued advancing. Uranium enrichment reached 60%. Weapons grade was 90%. The technical capability was nearly complete. Only political decisions prevented weaponization. Those decisions could change instantly. Israel maintained military options, strike capability against Iranian nuclear facilities. The archived documents had identified target lists. Current intelligence updated them. Plans existed. Resources were allocated. Authorization could come within hours if necessary. But military strikes created their own problems. Regional war, oil supply disruption, international condemnation. The archived documents had provided a better solution. Intelligence warfare, economic pressure, covert operations, achieving strategic goals without open conflict. The warehouse theft exemplified this approach. 60 agents involved in planning and execution, 3 years of preparation, 72 hours of actual operation. Result: massive strategic advantage without firing a shot. The perfect intelligence operation. High risk, high reward, successful execution. Barnea reflected on his career. 32 years in Mossad. The Tehran operation was his defining achievement. The mission that changed everything. His legacy would be the warehouse documents, the truth they revealed, the pressure they enabled, the weapons program they disrupted. But legacy wasn't the goal. Security was the goal. Israel's survival. The archived documents served that purpose. Every operation derived from them served that purpose. Personal recognition meant nothing. National survival meant everything. He looked at the implosion device blueprint one more time. The precise lines, the careful calculations, the signature at the bottom. This was the enemy. Not individual scientists, not specific facilities. The idea itself. The concept of nuclear weapons aimed at Israel. That idea needed to die. The archive theft had damaged that idea significantly, exposed it to international scrutiny, made it harder to implement, increased its costs, reduced its benefits. Intelligence warfare at its finest, destroying enemy capabilities through information rather than explosives. Years would pass before the operation's full impact could be measured. Decades, maybe. History would judge whether the warehouse theft had prevented nuclear war, whether Tamar and Mousavi's sacrifices had purchased survival, whether the mission had been worth its costs. Barnea believed it had. The alternative was unacceptable. Iran with nuclear weapons threatened not just Israel, but global stability. The archived documents proved Iran's intentions. Exposing those intentions was necessary. Stopping those intentions was imperative. The mission achieved both. The documents remained in Israeli custody, stored in climate-controlled vaults, digitized completely, backed up in multiple locations. The archive had become permanent record, evidence that couldn't be destroyed or denied, truth preserved for future generations. Researchers still analyzed the files, discovered new connections, identified new threats. The archive was an inexhaustible resource. 55,000 files containing layers of information, each layer revealing more about Iran's nuclear program, more about its deceptions, more about its capabilities. The warehouse in southern Tehran was gone, demolished in 2019. Iranian authorities erased the physical location, but they couldn't erase what had been taken from it. The documents existed beyond their control. The truth had escaped their grasp. That was the mission's permanent victory. Intelligence work was often invisible. Successes remained classified. Failures became public scandals. The warehouse theft was different. Netanyahu had made it public, used it for political impact. The operation became known worldwide. Rare moment when intelligence work received recognition. But recognition brought new pressures. Future operations faced higher scrutiny. Iranian security improved. The element of surprise was lost. Every intelligence service in the world studied the Tehran Heist, learned its methods, adapted their defenses. The success created its own challenges. Barnea accepted these challenges. They came with the territory. Intelligence work was constant adaptation, each success raising the difficulty level, each failure teaching painful lessons. The only constant was change. The only certainty was uncertainty. He closed his office, walked through Mossad headquarters, passed the memorial wall one more time, stopped at Tamar's name. She'd been 31 when executed, young, brave, committed to Israel despite never living there as adult. Her sacrifice represented the best of intelligence work, selfless service, ultimate commitment. The archived documents lived because Tamar had died. Mathematics was brutal, but clear. Her basement had stored 17 bags. Her cooperation enabled the mission. Her execution proved Iranian authorities understood the archive's importance. They killed the messenger, but couldn't stop the message. Barnea left headquarters at sunset. The building stood on coastal cliffs north of Tel Aviv. Mediterranean waves crashed below. The ancient sea, witness to millennia of conflict. This generation's conflict centered on nuclear weapons. Technology changed. Human nature didn't. The struggle for security continued endlessly. He drove home thinking about the operation. 6 years passed, still relevant, still impactful, still generating intelligence value. The warehouse theft was the gift that continued giving. Every day, analysts found new information. Every week, new operations launched based on archive intelligence. The mission never truly ended. Iran would eventually develop nuclear weapons. The archive documents suggested this was inevitable. International pressure could delay but not prevent. Technology spread. Knowledge accumulated. Barriers fell. The only question was timing. And Israel's response when the moment came. The archive provided the response framework. Target lists, facility locations, scientist identifications, supply chain vulnerabilities. Everything needed to disrupt the program. The documents were operational roadmap, strategic guide, tactical reference, complete intelligence package. Barnea arrived home. His family didn't know the operation's details. Operational security protected even family members. They knew he worked in intelligence. They knew he traveled frequently. They knew his work was dangerous. That was enough. That was all they could know. He sat in his study, looked at personal photographs, his children, his grandchildren. They existed because Israel existed. Israel existed because of intelligence operations like the warehouse theft. The chain of causation was direct. Security enabled survival. Survival enabled families. Families justified everything. The warehouse documents protected his grandchildren's future, prevented nuclear weapons from threatening their lives, disrupted enemy capabilities, maintained strategic advantage. Intelligence work was ultimately about protecting next generations, making their world safer, giving them futures worth living. The Tehran operation had accomplished this spectacularly, completely. The mission's success echoed through years, would echo through decades, perhaps through centuries. The documents would remain. The truth they contained would remain. Future historians would study them, learn from them, understand why the operation mattered. Barnea thought about the team, Levinson, Katz, Roth, Cohen, the agents who executed the mission perfectly. Their professionalism under pressure, their courage under threat, their skill under scrutiny. They'd performed flawlessly, made the impossible routine, turned desperate risk into calculated success. That was the essence of intelligence work, making the impossible possible, the dangerous manageable, the terrifying operational. Good agents did this consistently. Great agents did it under impossible conditions. The Tehran team was great. Their legacy was permanent. The warehouse theft would be studied in intelligence training programs forever. The planning, the execution, the extraction under pressure, the political impact. Everything about the operation set standards, established benchmarks, created expectations. Future agents would try to match it. Few would succeed. Barnea felt satisfied, not proud. Pride was inappropriate, but satisfied. The mission had served its purpose. Protected Israel, disrupted enemies, prevented disaster. That was enough. That was everything. He returned to his desk one final time, looked at family photos beside professional files, the two parts of his life. Family man and intelligence director. The warehouse operation connected both. His work protecting their lives. His sacrifices purchasing their security. The mission's meaning crystallized in that connection. The documents were safe. The truth was preserved. Israel's security was enhanced. Future generations were protected. The warehouse theft had achieved its objectives, completely, permanently. The mission was success, absolute success, the kind that changed history. Barnea closed his files, turned off his computer. The work continued tomorrow. New operations, new threats, new challenges. Intelligence work never stopped, never paused, never ended. But tonight he allowed himself satisfaction. The Tehran warehouse operation had been perfect as intelligence operations could be. That knowledge sustained him, justified everything, made the costs bearable. The spherical implosion device blueprint remained on his desk. Tomorrow he'd study it again, look for new insights, new applications, new operational opportunities. But tonight it was simply reminder of what they'd accomplished, what they'd prevented, what they'd protected. The archive lived. The truth was out. Iran's deceptions were exposed. Israel's security was maintained. The mission had succeeded beyond expectations. That was legacy. That was achievement. That was the Tehran warehouse operation's final victory. Complete, permanent, irreversible.